Hey everyone, good afternoon. I'm Brittaney from ADWEEK. We're going to start out with quick fire question everyone answers. What's the most exciting development that you're seeing coming into retail media? We can just go down the sofa.
So for me, it's been the scaling of offsite, kind of underpinned by privacy-safe data collaboration. So seeing more and more media owners on a local level working with more and more retailers to ultimately deliver better outcomes for CPGs in the marketplace. And it's just growing so quickly as we see it across the various different tech vendors in the market. That was more than a sentence. I'll stop there.
The integration with organic, I think as ad density is picking up, the trade-off between organic products and content placements on site is definitely getting important. And I think the technology to manage that is also sort of stepping out with the AI and machine learning behind search and recommendation software.
I think what's happening in distributed commerce right now and being able to plug first-party data into providers that provide this data-safe environment to amplify your brand and scale it across numerous channels and platforms like never before.
Hey everyone, from my perspective, I think I'm interested to see how retail media platforms can use their data to actually predict and anticipate what customers and consumers are going to interact with their spaces.
Great answers. So let's get down into some of the nitty gritty. So what do you think is the right balance between using data responsibly and delivering useful personalization? I'll throw it to you, Nick.
Thank you. Well, I think it starts with, you talk about responsibility there, it starts with the consumer. And it starts with the engagement that either in the context of offsite retail media, a retailer or indeed a media owner has with their consumer and the value exchange that sits between them. I think the industry is coming on leaps and bounds in terms of that transparency. Consumers understand the value exchange they're going into. They understand that if I get a promoted discount for these products within a store as a result of loyalty, it's ultimately being exchanged for the fact that that organisation is going to utilise my data. And I think that transparency level there is fantastic. So it's a really important foundation for everything that then comes thereon. When you start to think about collaboration between parties, so between the retailer and the media owner, it then comes down to not being lazy, not just relying on old techniques for matching, but actually thinking about privacy through the entire process. So not effectively delving into the who, but delving into the how and the why to then inform a better decision and ultimately a more impactful campaign. So steering away from drilling into, as I say, the personal and focusing on a more holistic picture. I think picking on it was Clive from Dunnhumby who quoted it, be cool, not creepy, with data. Just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah.
So it's taking the right protections in terms of the communication with your customer, the right technologies to enable protection of the privacy in the interrogation between data sets, and then just not going too far with it.
So when does it become intrusive? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Holly.
Yeah, so I think it becomes intrusive when the customer experience is intrusive. And just, what Nick said in terms of it has to start with the customer. It always comes back to that customer relevance. And the brands that really do this the best are the ones that are leveraging their first-party data alongside tools like machine learning and AI, customer data platforms to really get smart about getting into that customer mindset and delivering on that customer relevancy. We did a survey recently with Harris Poll that showed that 62% of consumers will actually abandon their cart if they're faced with irrelevant messages in that transaction journey. And so relevancy is really key in terms of understanding how to really effectively use data in that moment.
And James, do you think that this is changing with AI, or how is that being changed?
I think our experience of the internet, whether it's your Netflix interface or your Spotify Discover or your Amazon.com facade, it's all similar machine learning recommendation systems. And I think the beauty of it is a lot of them don't depend on any real PII. It's all about, if you listen to songs 1, 2, 3, are you going to listen to song 4 because can we predict that you might because 100,000 other people did? It doesn't necessarily need to know who you are. You're not your demographic. You're not your tenuous data point that we might be able to put upon you. You are what you buy. You are what you do. So, I think that's very privacy safe, in fact.
Yeah, so you're kind of optimistic about those developments, or?
Highly. I mean, we launched just as GDPR was coming into play, and this is the way to build, and actually it's typically more accurate than any kind of segment or audience-based targeting. So.
Yeah, interesting. So what role should context play in commerce media, Lachlan?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is an old saying around if content is king, then context is queen. I think we saw the example earlier today with the Hamish and Andy example, where they're using the peep show as a kind of extreme way to look at it, and the lack of success that they had there. So for us, great creative needs to be delivered at the right moments, and customers in the way in which they engage with that creative, it should be a value add to them. They should see the value within what they're doing and their experience with whoever the retailer may be.
What do you think of that, Holly?
Yeah, I mean, I think context is incredibly important. You have to really reach the customer where they are and understand that consumer mindset. For example, we work with brands across the transaction moment, and the payments page is one of the most important pages in that environment. You know, obviously, payment providers on that page are incredibly relevant for the customer. It's also a really amazing page for payment providers to acquire new customers. So, you know, the relevance is clearly there, the context is clearly there. However, we also know in those environments where it's incredibly rich with first-party data, being able to leverage that data to understand what the customer is actually looking for in that environment beyond just the contextual piece is paramount. So, for example, you know, a customer comes through, they land on the payments page, and maybe you want to show a co-brand card or a buy now, pay later provider, but that individual customer is never going to engage with those offers. You know, maybe they have the credit card already, or they won't meet the credit qualification minimums. So understanding that is so important, because if you get that wrong in that environment, you're annoying the customer, first of all, you're wasting real estate, and you're causing friction, an incredibly important part of that consumer journey. So I think context is important, but it has to be layered with that first-party data and really understanding what the customer is going to want and need in that moment.
Yeah, maybe we can give the audience some examples. Like, is there a specific campaign that you saw leverage, you know, certain technology or do this in an effective way? Like, James, do you have any thoughts on this one?
We actually have some really good case study data on it. There's a beauty retailer in the UK who initially launched retail media with us on site, and they went for a pure bid auction-based, sort of rules-based targeting initially. And what they found when they switched to a relevance model, which used a combination of behavioural collaborative filtering, NLP and computer vision technology as a sort of multimodal recommendation system, that the improvement in CTR, you know, went up about, you know, literally 9 times. You know, is that sort of material difference in terms of doing irrelevant and relevant placements. So it's very valuable.
Yeah. Anyone else think of any campaigns that or work that they've seen?
Yeah, we had a convenience store example with an energy drink promotion that was playing 24 hours a day. What we saw post-campaign was that we could have played 30% of the amount of advertising that was delivered and still driven the exact same result. So because people aren't consuming those products in overnight hours, the advertising was not swaying the decision because it's not a natural experience for the customer. And so by optimizing that, we can add value to the way in which those advertisers are spending their dollars and deliver the same return as if we're on a 24-hour, always-on basis. So a really interesting one.
So kind of looking ahead now, is there a new emerging consumer trend that's going to influence how we activate?
There's a bit of a channel shift, isn't there? I think AI is the kind of elephant in the room, and will that get rid of e-commerce entirely? Almost certainly not. You know, it's a new channel. I think it's just making sure that data structures are, you know, there's always been explicit and implicit signals that are evinced by customers on a website. Explicit being search and browse, and implicit being what are you looking at and what are you adding to your basket, and, you know, being able to sort of tie those events to predictions. Personalisation is just good prediction. How can your models and technology stand up to sort of AI interest, whether that's an on-site chatbot or visiting from AI traffic? I think that's...
Yeah, you mentioned signals. Is there a new type of signal that you think is going to kind of transform customer journeys?
Conversational queries.
Yeah.
Even when people are typing into the search boxes that we power, you're starting to see more and more complex queries as people expect the ability for the models to return and understand, that you're making dinner for two or you're buying on behalf of someone. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the right balance between kind of the long-term brand building versus driving short-term ROI?
I'm going to pick on TV and shameless plug. We run a podcast every month, Identity Architects. And the last question in that podcast, I know several people in this room have been on it, is always, what's the advert that most resonated with you as a child? And it's always been TV. TV's always been the answer. So I'm just sort of thinking and focusing on the medium of TV for a second. In the world we're in now, where you've got the ability to collaborate a rich data set from a retailer and a BVOD provider or a TV provider, you've kind of got this best of both worlds. You've got the ability to still build brand and drive advertising at scale on a much larger basis of significant segments, and do things like brand uplift studies, comparing exposure to brand uplift studies, etc., and that side of things, as well as going right down the funnel and being highly specific, highly targeted, and comparing exposure to actual SKU level transactions within store. So you can look at it on a much more immediate basis as a performance media, but also go right up the funnel and run the brand elements as well, effectively all through one collaboration environment.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that? What's the right balance there?
I mean, I think brand and performance will always be intrinsically linked. We do a lot of incrementality studies, and because you want to obviously prove that what you're spending at the bottom of the funnel is delivering incremental results, and there's always an impact from upper funnel. Like, you just can't avoid it. You have to have that brand presence in order to drive performance, and you can see it intrinsically linked in similar customer journeys when it's the brand and earlier up in the funnel in terms of the homepage or header page or what's bringing you to that page is all driven by brand. And then when you carry those brand messages through that journey in a smart and relevant way, that really does drive the performance at the bottom of the funnel. So I think that there's always going to be that link, and I think Rory had that great image on the screen that showed the baton being passed at the final mile or final foot. They're symbiotic. So
it's super important, isn't it, to have that combined strategy. It's not one or the other.
Right.
We did a campaign for Lego on Hamleys last Black Friday and Christmas. I think there was roughly a 100% uplift in share of basket with the upper funnel only. But when you added all of the performance, end of funnel, lower funnel, sponsored product placements, relevant cross-sells or similar items, I think that share of basket increase was about 300%. So, it was a material uplift putting the strategies together.
Yeah. Right. So I want to make sure we leave our audience with some takeaways. So we're going to have all of you answer this one next. What is one thing that, if they can only take away one thing from the session, one thing they should be prioritizing going forward? And let's start from the other end with you, Lachlan.
Sure, no problems. I think from my perspective, working on data structure and making sure that retail media networks have the data in place to allow a lot of the capabilities that now exist across many of the channels. I think that's often a first stumbling block, and the people that are doing a really good job of that are making significant progress in everything that they're doing. So that would be my starting point.
Yeah, I think less is more. Fewer, smarter messages, and working with providers that can help you deliver those messages by leveraging tools like machine learning and AI to make sense of your customer data in order to deliver those streamlined experiences.
We're in the age of the algorithm, and it's pretty critical for the brand advertisers as well as the retailers running the retail media networks to really scrutinize and understand the technology that's under the hood. Generic claims of, we use AI to do this, or we use machine learning to do this. Well, how? How exactly does it work? And do you know the difference between a keyword search model, a vector search model, and a transformer-based search model? What elements, that the CPG or the supplier, what data that they're providing to the retailer is actually indexed and used in those search models? All of these things are super important for how you optimize your own organic positions as well as your paid positions. So time to sort of skill up on the boring technology, because it's going to make you more money.
Slightly scared of answering this one because it might be slightly controversial, but
we love controversy.
well, no, maybe not, because we're seeing some change. But I think retailers, certainly if I point to the UK, have done a stellar job of standing up their own networks, working with other media owners, etc. But they've basically built walled gardens. They've built their own solution that connects to other media owners, and they've kept themselves to themselves and competed. Whereas the elephant in the room, of course, is that Amazon have got everything everywhere. Not to pick on Amazon, by the way, because obviously that's a fantastic proposition, but for genuine change to exhibit, I think there needs to be more collaboration between the retailers. Certainly we pick on the grocers for a second, to enable genuine scale that competes with Amazon and ultimately competes with the planner's budget. Because at the moment it's, I've got to go here for this, I've got to go here for this, I've got to go here for this, whereas the technologies now exist to enable them to collaborate together and go, right, okay, here is the entire audience of people who buy Snickers. I always come up with terrible examples, I know I picked on that, maybe I need one. But it's that openness to collaborate together to offer something more holistic for the CPGs.
And what might that look like if they did collaborate in that way?
Well, I think there are organisations who are starting to move towards this and overcoming the mindset that your competitors, when you have a much bigger competitor somewhere else. So it's not technical. Technical can be delivered now. It's political. It's I don't want to partner with my competitor, is my take on it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being too simplistic and I'll be accosted on the way out, but I just think that it's an easy next step to make to really give the scale that the CPGs want and the ease of defining a campaign.
So that's kind of the biggest barrier to that is in politics.
I think in my humble opinion, yes.
It's better for the customer, isn't it? If there's a coalition retail media effort for the off-site piece especially.
Yeah.
You don't want to be hit by Snickers from 3 different retailers.
Actually, I think it's better for the retailer at the end of the day because they're going to get a bigger share of the market spend as well. Because it's easier to buy.
How would you kind of sell that in if you were trying to move in that direction at your workplace?
Within my workplace, specifically, well, we work with a number of those retailers already. It's more a case of actually overcome the fear, have a look at what the total Snickers audience looks like within the UK, because you're not giving each other anything. All we're getting is that initial view of what the entire market looks like.
Great. Well, I think that gives us some food for thought, hopefully something to bring back to work tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for listening. I think that's time now.